some of our big cities. What the marchers are demanding is a pause in the Brexit process, and on Monday, Parliament will debate on the back of a big petition whether there should be a second referendum. So I want to hear from you if you think we should pause Brexit, if you think a second referendum is a good idea. And from 11, we'll be looking at your experiences with mental health services in this country, and I'll be sharing some of mine. Plus, do you remember this from last week?
Wow. Thank you, Nigel. What a job.
Well, that was part of the speech and Donald Trump's response to what I said on the stage with him last week, and I will be telling you for the first time exactly what Donald said to me when I'd finished. So, just over 2 months ago, we voted in that referendum on the 23rd of June, and we voted to leave the European Union. We were told that the most awful things would happen to this country. There'd be terrible poverty, and businesses would close, and everything was going to be absolutely awful. And what happened this week? We saw the figures for manufacturing in this country for the month of August up. We've seen the retail sales figures for the month of July. Very good, strong figures, much higher than anybody thought. We've seen the employment statistics, again, confounding all the doom-mongers, far better than anybody thought. And we've had a tourism industry boom in this country, partly as a result of staycations and partly as a result, with the pound being a bit weaker, it makes it cheaper for foreign people to come here. And to cap it all, we have the wonderful news that the champagne maker, Paul Roger, who were Churchill's favourite champagne maker, are going, when Britain does leave the European Union, to start producing bottles, pint-size, imperial measurements of champagne. So you would have thought, at least I would have thought, that everything was great. I would have thought the result was clear. It wasn't the best of three after all, was it? Although the European Union itself does have a fine tradition of making people like the Danes and the Irish vote again. But is it? Am I missing something? You know, perhaps actually the whole referendum was conducted so poorly that it all needs to be done again. I'm very keen to hear from people who think we should have a second referendum, we should pause the Brexit process, and I'm also hearing people saying we must maintain the free movement of people. So it's over to you, and we'll start with Sean from Stoke. Sean, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I couldn't think that I could talk to you today, but I'm quite a minority of your support. I'm young and I'm actually from some Asian background, so you'd expect me to lean over to the left. But
well, not necessarily, Sean. Not necessarily. I mean, I think we can generalise too much about this.
Well, yeah, but as you know, there is a march in Europe, and well, I just feel, there are people who, in my age group, who who are in opposite of my support in leaving the European Union. And now that you've resigned as leader, how would you suggest people like me, who want to have maybe a career in politics, would you suggest that?
Well, Sean, Sean, let me say. Let me say this to you, Sean. Let me say this to you. Anybody young like you that says to me, how do I have a career in politics? The answer is very simple. Go and get a job first. Go and work in the real world first. That's my best advice to you. It really is. We've lost him. OK, no problem. Well, Sean, like a lot of young people I meet around the universities, they want to be in politics. And the trouble is, I think too many of our politicians have gone straight from university into research offices, become MPs in their late 20s without enough experience of the world. And I think that's a real mistake. Chris in Richmond, what have you got to say this morning?
What I have to say, Nigel, is I absolutely agree. If I wasn't with my kids today, I would be on the march today.
Yep.
The whole point of this referendum is the lies on your side particularly, and I'm not going to say there weren't distruths on the Remain side, were outrageous. You wrote back within one day about that money going back to the NHS. Daniel Hannan squirmed and squiggled when it came to immigration. And we have no idea what the new model looks like. So it's absolutely right that we pause until we know what's going to happen.
Well,
you know?
Chris, OK, I mean, let me just sort of come back on two of those points. Lies. My mum and dad voted in a referendum back in 1975. They were told it was a common market.
I'm not talking about
we're
that.
going to stay part of.
2016. Can we not move back 41 years? Let's talk about today.
Well, you can accuse, if you want, you can accuse the Leave side of lies, but I am accusing the Remain side of 43 years of lies. The point is, the only real criticism, I think, that the Remain side had of the Leave side was that pledge of £350 million a week for the NHS.
No, not just that. You said you were going to take back control of migration, and Daniel Hannan, a day later, was worming back and saying, oh, well, there might be this thing called free movement of labour, and he was trying to create some impression. Actually, no, we weren't talking about reducing immigration. Actually, we didn't really promise that in the first place. What was this taking back control? What was that massive queue of refugees all about then? What was that? Was that just irrelevance to the campaign, Nigel?
Well, Chris,
I think you're being really disingenuous here.
Chris, do you want to join the Euro, Chris?
No, but that's it. We're not talking about the Euro. We're talking about the Brexit vote, and what we're talking about is the fact that you, as a group of people, never told us what it was going to look like afterwards. Is it WTO, as some of your people want to say? Is it single market with some immigration controls? What does it look like? You haven't told us. And business needs to know now. And people need. My wife doesn't even know if she can stay in this country. The point is, you told us you wanted to leave the European Union, but we don't know what comes next, and we need to know what comes next.
What is certain, Chris, is uncertainty. If we chose to stay a member of the European Union, that future is desperately uncertain, not just given the migrant crisis, which you've mentioned, but also the fact that the euro, in my opinion, is on the verge of its second and biggest serious meltdown.
Yeah, on that point, you know damn well that we were protected from any future bailout, so that is an irrelevance as far as the United Kingdom is concerned, and you know that for a fact.
Well, not really, because
Yes, it was. That was one thing that Cameron negotiated. You're wrong, Nigel. Don't try and mislead people again.
You can do your best, mate, but I have spent 17 years over there. I do know something about this subject, and we are a 20% shareholder in the European Central Bank. So if the whole thing goes belly up, we are going to be on the hook for many, many billions of pounds. But, Chris, the point I'm making to you is this. There is one certainty that I argued for in this referendum, and that was that if we left the European Union, we would be back in charge, we'd be back in control. And that, to me, is what this referendum was about.
Control, then? Why are the French about to potentially close the Sangat camp? If Juppé, or certainly if Sarkozy becomes president in a year's time, you don't get it. You've lost control.
I'm sorry.
I actually think, frankly, good luck to the French. If that's what they want to do, then people in this country...
And do you know what, Chris? If the border moves back to Dover, we'll police it, we'll enforce it. Anyway, I'm not going to persuade you, that's for certain. What does Linda in Heston have to say?
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
Speak to you. Yes, I'm entirely in agreement with you. I mean, I feel that this is absolutely ridiculous. These marches, okay, they're entitled to their opinion, but I feel that it was quite a statement when the people voted out. And I and my family, we've wanted out for a long, long time. And I voted out the first time, and I certainly voted this time as well. Yeah. And I just feel that, the fact that they're going to debate it in Parliament is just horrendous.
Well, I must admit, Linda, I'm a bit surprised by it. But let's just see, Linda, what Simon in Mallorca thinks about this. Simon, good morning.
Nigel, I believe that we should have the second referendum. I'm one of the people that voted on that Parliament website for the second referendum because I believe that people voted out on a bunch of misinformation, let's call it that. And now people have seen the right information because after the vote you admitted, and so did Boris Johnson and others, that they were incorrect information. So people were voting on misinformation. Now they have the correct information. Let's let everybody vote again and see what happens. And you're saying that nothing's happened the day after the referendum, but there was reports out this week from financial companies that say it's going to take up to 10 years.
There's all sorts of things being said by companies, but there's been more good news than bad. Linda, tell me, you voted to leave. Simon thinks you were misinformed. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think I was misinformed at all. I mean, over many, many years, I've studied the EU with some seriousness. And when you came along, Nigel, I thought, thank God, at last there is someone here who will be our leader, who will speak for us. And it was just so amazing because, as I said, I felt for a long time, I read that book by, what was it called? The Rotten Heart of Europe.
Yeah, Bernard Connolly. He was
Connolly.
he was an economist, wasn't he, that worked in the European Commission? Yeah.
And when I read that, I just thought, my goodness me, that was quite some years ago when that book came out.
Yeah, 20 years ago, yeah.
Yes, that's right. And I've been reading up on it, and I definitely think that there is so much going on there.
Well, Linda, actually,
people don't know about.
Linda, actually, you are incredibly well informed because you've read books about this and you've studied this and you knew exactly why you were voting to leave, and thank you. So, Simon, you see, she was pretty well informed, wasn't she? I mean, she knew what she knew exactly what she was voting on, and I would put it to you.
I'm also well informed, thank you very much, because my wife is a non-EU citizen, and she lives with me in Spain, and I've read up the laws on the UK about where she's allowed to go, what we're allowed to do, where she's allowed to live. I understand the European rules, I understand the British rules, and I'm quite well informed on that and have been dealing with it for many years. I also believe that you said before the referendum that if the vote is close, like 52-48 on the Remain side, you wanted a second referendum because it wasn't conclusive enough.
No,
because
I
it's gone in your favour. You suddenly backtracked on that.
Actually, Simon, I said there'd be some within the Conservative Party who I knew would be irreconcilable to this result. But frankly, when I hear the Scottish nationalists now talking about another referendum on separating from the rest of the United Kingdom, I think it all sounds a bit like sour grapes. And I would argue, Simon, that there was indeed a certainty that what we voted for in this referendum, we voted to take back control of our country. Exactly how that looks, nobody can tell you right today, because just as nobody could tell you exactly what it would be like had we voted to stay in. But I don't think anyone was confused, but I do, I respect your opinion if that's how you feel. Stay tuned to find out what Donald Trump said to me at the end of that rally last week in Mississippi. For now, you're listening to LBC. It's 10:15.
This is LBC. Whether it's whitewater rafting, zipping through the Alps, or even just getting the kids back to school. Whatever your adventure, do it in style in our award-winning Renault crossovers. Now with an extra £500 off when you test drive a Renault Captur or all-new Renault Kadjar before the 26th of September. Available when ordered by 26th of September and registered by 30th of September. Retail customers only. Participating dealers only. T's and C's apply. See Renault.co.uk/offers.
Tradesmen, here's the plan. Get to the rendezvous. You contact the foreman, we'll show you the ropes and the tools. Get into your job and get out. You'll be sipping margaritas on the beach before you know it. But first, prove you're a guy they can trust. Show them your direct line public liability policy, which has been conveniently wired to your phone. And tell them you're with the wolf. Let's get to work.
Get instant confirmation of your cover sent straight to your smartphone. Can your insurance do that? Search Direct Line Public Liability Insurance. Valid email address required. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
If you've got mortgage arrears, mounting debts, or cash flow problems, do not despair. The lovely people at Property Rescue can help. They can buy your home for cash, often exchanging within 48 hours. They can even give you a cash advance, which could be very handy. And they're buying houses all over Britain. For a genuine cash sale, go to propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue, problems solved.
There's no better way to cruise around London than with this sporty little open top number. It's got the distinctive profile, the quick shift gears, LED lights, and of course that red paintwork. To get your hands on this little slice of open road heaven, you'll have to wait about 2 seconds. Just visit your local Santander Cycles docking station, enter your bank card, and take as many 30-minute spins as you like for just £2 a day. No membership, no joining fee, lots of admiring glances.
Transport for London. Every journey matters.
Hit the bullseye this October by becoming a sober hero and take a month-long break from the booze to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support. No darting to the bar, no doubles. Just wake up happily hangover-free. Gain maximum respect and know that you'll be helping to change the lives of people with cancer. It's all in a month's work for a sober hero. So go sober for October and sign up today at gosober.org.uk. Game on.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant. There's lots to love about London in the summer, but at Car Giant we offer giant choice and giant savings all year round.
Car Giant, of course.
Car Giant! With up to 8,000 in stock, finding your perfect car has never been easier, which means Car Giant is London's hottest summer destination.
Car Giant.
Summer loving at Car Giant. Visit cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
I'm Nick Ferrari. Knife crime in London has risen by 16% in the past 2 years, with at least 10 young people dying on the city's streets this year alone. It's time to drop the knife. Join me all next week where we launch LBC's Drop the Knife, Save a Life campaign to raise awareness on the dangers of carrying a knife. LBC.
Welcome back, and, a lot of you are calling in and saying, look, we voted out, we knew what we were voting for, and let's just get on with it. But I want to hear from those of you who think we should pause, those of you who think, indeed, we should have a second referendum. And to get involved in this, you can call us on 0345 60 60 973. You can tweet 84850, or... Sorry, that's text. You can text at 84850 or you can tweet at LBC. And we go first to Peter from Wimbledon. Peter, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nigel. Thanks for taking the call. My opinion is the reason we should be holding a second referendum because the majority of people who voted, they voted more like it was more of a protest vote than anything else. And the other information you guys on the Leave side was a lot of misinformation, and people bought this, And unfortunately, once the facts become known, we should be given a second chance. We can't allow you guys ruin our future, and that is it. People like yourself, you go to the States, you first you criticize Obama for raising his opinion about Britain should remain in part of the EU, and then you yourself go to the States and share the platform with Donald Trump. That's hypocrisy, Nigel. And unfortunately, you are a hypocrite.
Well,
that's my opinion.
Well, there are lots of things there, Peter. Thank you. The first point about protest vote. Look, you could easily argue that David Cameron won the election as a protest vote because people did not like Ed Miliband and certainly didn't want the SNP to be having too dominant an influence in Westminster. So, whether people vote for positive or negative reasons, we certainly don't ask for general elections to be rerun. And as far as the information was concerned, Peter, I never told a lie to anybody in this referendum. I simply said, I want my country back. I want control of my borders back. And actually, you're saying that we've ruined your future. Let me tell you whose futures are ruined. The whole of the Mediterranean. Literally the whole of the Mediterranean, where we see youth unemployment rates of 50%. We see a currency that's been a complete failure. And I tell you what's really interesting, Peter, is that this march today in London, I bet you that the vast majority of people on this march will be under 30 years old. And yet, across the rest of Europe, the demonstrations from the under-30s are against the European Union, against open borders, and against the currency. So, and as for hypocrisy, well, all I went to America to do was to tell the story of Brexit and to tell how we managed to engage 2.5 million people who normally didn't vote in elections, who took part. How is that hypocrisy, Peter?
Well, the thing is, you're trying to kind of relate two subjects which have no relation whatsoever. How is Brexit related to Trump campaign? I mean, why wouldn't you go and stick on the same platform, share a platform with Hillary Clinton? Well,
I'll tell you why. And we will talk about this from 10:30. It's very interesting that Brexit is not just something that affects the United Kingdom. It isn't just something that affects the rest of Europe. This is a global event. This is the first time that a country has reasserted its rights as a democratic self-governing nation. And Hillary is very, very firmly on the side that's... I mean, in fact, if Hillary was in London, she'd probably be on this march today. She'd probably be speaking. She'd be there with Eddie Izzard and all these other luminaries. And Hillary thinks that Brexit is a huge mistake. Trump thinks that Brexit is one of the greatest things that has happened in modern history. So, like it or not, Peter, Brexit is very much a part of this American presidential debate. And so I went there and said what I said. And I was supported by Trump, and I was really very roundly condemned by Hillary. So this question of whether nations run themselves or whether they give the authority to make decisions to higher levels, it's a real debate across the whole of the Western world. And Peter, thank you for your call. And we go next to Asher in Coventry. Good morning.
Good morning.
How do you feel about this issue?
Well, I voted Remain.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate that of the people who voted, circa 50% of the people wanted to leave. And I think, actually, rather than pausing, we should be entering into our normal, standard democratic process, which means that the referendum, which, as I believe, I've understood this correctly, is actually a recommendation to Parliament, then it should go to Parliament, and our elected representatives should debate it, discuss it, and then make the right decision for us. That's actually what you guys get paid to do.
In a sense, that is happening on Monday, isn't it? Because there has been a petition, there is going to be a debate that takes place in Westminster about whether there should be a second referendum.
Sure, but it shouldn't have. I don't believe it should have had to go to a petition. We have standard democratic rules, and I know, obviously, there's a lot of shenanigans going on, certainly in the Labour Party, where sadly the democratic processes seem to be wanting to be challenged. But that's the process. It shouldn't have had to be a petition. And ultimately, as I said, I voted Remain, but I think what we need now is to start healing divisions. And I think that stamp of approval that Parliament should give to it. That should have been the normal process, because we have got some serious challenges as a country, regardless of which way the actual result had gone. Because, sadly, I have to say, I think that your campaign did highlight vast inaccuracies in immigration. So we have some risk to, heal there. The economy needs stabilising. I'd like to understand what people mean by sovereignty, and getting our country back and making Britain great again, because I'm a bit worried by what I see on social media about what some people believe that is. Within human rights, the protection that the EU did give us as being a member of a greater movement to protect people's human rights. And we have the Tories now, we're giving them a mandate to do exactly what they want. It is a scary time, I think, whether you voted Leave or Remain, this country.
But can I ask you, I understand you've got concerns about things, but let me ask you, we voted for Brexit. Do you think the government should push ahead with Article 50 and take us out of the European Union? Or are you saying we should rethink this and perhaps even have Parliament overrule the advisory referendum vote?
I'm saying, to latch on to the last bit of it, that we should allow Parliament to enact the normal process, as would happen with any other referendum. And whichever way that goes, we have problems that are bigger than the vote to leave or remain in the EU. And I think, what we've seen, I don't believe that there's been an increase in racial hatred, for example, but I do believe that certain people think they have a mandate, and that's why we're seeing more of it, and therefore the media is obviously going to highlight the negativity, because that's what sells papers, that's what pushes social media posts up. Cute kittens are great, but if we can divide people, then we get more clicks. So what I'm saying is, whether you voted to leave or remain, our biggest challenge isn't actually enacting Article 50. Our biggest challenge is to start to heal the rifts in this country, and I think people like yourself have a great responsibility to do. It's not just about poking holes in people who voted either way.
No, I'm not trying to do that. But I would say this to you, that most people I meet who voted Remain say to me, Nigel, I was worried about the value of the house, or we're in business and we were told things might go wrong. There weren't that many people, in my belief, who voted Remain that believed in the flag and the anthem and a European army and the project. But let me say this to you, of those that voted to leave, a far bigger percentage of those feel it very strongly, viscerally. And I think if Parliament was to attempt to overrule the wishes of 17.4 million people, then I think you'd see real division and real anger in this country. I simply don't believe that people would actually put up with it. But your point, that Parliament must have a say, well, Monday will be very, very interesting indeed. And Nadeem in Doncaster. Nadeem, good morning. What have you got to say?
Morning, Nigel. I do think that there should be a second referendum, and I'll just tell you why. The referendum, there was just two choices. Do you want to leave or do you want to remain? And I think if there was a third choice, which was leave, remain or reform, I think probably 100% of people would have said, yeah, we want a reform. And then those people like yourself who are actually leading, irrespective of whichever side of the campaign you were on, would then have to furnish people with appropriate information. Now, I've been listening to you, and you've been saying, well, I've not said anything or given anybody any false hopes, so on and so forth. I mean, I work for the NHS, and I know that there was this whole thing about £350 million to the NHS as soon as we leave the EU, and then you actually reneged on that promise, so on and so forth. So I don't want anyone to actually say that we haven't received misinformation, but I would also say we haven't received the relevant level of information.
Well, Nadeem,
I also agree. Can I just
quickly? Yeah.
I would also agree with Asher. If you're, for example, saying you want to have control back of your borders, you want us to be a sovereign state, well, actually, Parliament is actually democratically elected, and those people are elected to actually make the decision in the best interest of people. So what we can't actually have here is one democratic process actually being played off against the other. If you want sovereignty, then that Parliament should actually, in a sovereign way, actually make the appropriate decision. So my point is that we need to now have a referendum on what the actual deal is, on the actual facts. And let's actually have a proper democratic process. Let's have real control. Let's have real sovereignty in this country.
Well, sovereignty, Nadeem, can vest itself in several ways. It can vest itself in the use of a popular referendum. It can vest itself in Parliament. Indeed, it can vest itself in our own Supreme Court. The one thing that we did vote for, Nadeem, was for those decisions to be ours and not for any of them to be overruled from elsewhere. I would just say this to you. I understand your point fully, that if you offered people the reform option, many of them would go for it. But remember, David Cameron went to try to reform. He went to try to get a deal. He came back with 3/5 of 5/8 of very, very little. And even since the British referendum, when you would think that the European leaders might have learnt a lesson from this, what have we seen? We've seen the leaders of Italy, of Germany and of France getting together, saying we're pushing on with full militarisation of the European Union and we're pushing on with our political project. So I don't think there's going to be any reform at all. OK, well, we'll continue to take your calls on whether you think we should or should not be pausing over Brexit, and whether you agree with me that it's fascinating that the American presidential election is now discussing Brexit. Yep, I was there last week. I did appear on a stage with Donald Trump, and I will tell you a little bit later exactly what he said to me when I'd finished. But right now, it's 10:30 and it's news time with Moira Alderson.
A series of marches are taking place later, calling for the government to halt the process of leaving the European Union. The protesters also want greater public consultation on every stage of the Brexit negotiations. Theresa May is heading to the G20 summit in China, where she's expected to face pressure to approve plans for a Chinese-backed nuclear plant in Somerset. Number 10 says the Prime Minister will send a message about the UK's future outside the EU. A NASA spacecraft has beamed ghostly sounds of Jupiter back to Earth. Juno, which took 5 years to reach the planet, recorded the whistling sounds above its north pole. LBC weather, a dry and sunny start in the southeast of England, sunshine and heavy showers elsewhere, a high of 21 degrees.
This is LBC.
This weekend in the Times, roast chicken with Cheats gravy, the curry you can whip up in 20 minutes, the foolproof chocolate cake to impress your guests. We revealed 16 simple and delicious recipes for the meals that everyone should know how to make. Pick up your copy of the Easy Recipe Guide, only in the Times this Saturday.
This message isn't aimed at you. You know that on a motorway, a red X above any lane means that you can't drive in it and could be prosecuted if you do. But apparently, there are some drivers who don't realise this and are a danger to themselves and to other road users. So those drivers do need to know that a red X above any lane means that the lane may be blocked by a broken down vehicle, emergency services or road workers. For more details, they should search online for smart motorways and never drive in any lane with a red X above it.
Do you know what Gaz and Lecky are getting up to in your home? How much energy they're using right now, or what the bill will be? Of course you don't. No one does. But when you get your new smart meter installed, you will. From now until 2020, every home in Britain can claim a smart meter from their energy supplier at no extra cost. to receive accurate bills and show exactly how much energy is being used in pounds and pence. Let's get gas and lecky under control. For more information, pick up a leaflet from your local post office branch or visit smartenergygb.org.
Wellman and Wellwoman are the leading multivitamins for men and for women. Comprehensive formulas with vitamins B6 and B12 to support normal energy release. Live life well. Wellman and Wellwoman from Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
Churchy, wherefore art thou, Churchy? As a television, I have endured the ultimate tragedy, water damage.
Oh, no.
But the show must go on.
If your old item gets damaged, we'll help you replace it with something more modern.
Oh, yes.
It's time a new player took to the stage, Churchy.
No.
Churchill, depend on the dog. Based on the modern-day equivalent, available on items damaged beyond repair, underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
WeBuyAnyCar.com. You're probably so used to hearing it, you may have forgotten what it's saying. No, I'm not being daft. What I mean is, they really do buy any car. Not just your Fords, Vauxhalls and BMWs. I'm talking any car. Rolls, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, your mum's Mini. So if you've got any car to sell, it's worth going to WeBuyAnyCar.com. See, the clue's in the name. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nigel Farage.
Welcome back, and we're having a heated discussion on whether there should or should not be a second referendum. Strong views. Nick in Harrow, do you have a strong view? Hello. OK, I think let's try and sort that line out, Nick. That's not working. We'll go to Aaron in Cockfosters. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to say that we should go full steam ahead for Brexit. There was a clear vote in favour of Brexit by well over 1 million people. And on the issue of misinformation, I think the Remain side were deliberately obfuscatory about the issue of Turkey joining the European Union, and about, I think it's Article 42 of the Lisbon Treaty, which says that the European Union wants to go for full militarisation and have its own defence force. So in terms of the information out there was no misinformation whatsoever on the Leave side, and for now to question a democratic vote in this way slacks of fascism, in my view.
Fascism, wow, that's strong stuff. Nick in Harrow, you think there should be a second referendum. Is that some form of fascism? Hello? Oh, well, he didn't want to play ball. Yeah, Aaron, that's a pretty strong way of putting it. Whether it's fascism or not, I don't know. But I have to say that it does seem to me, and I've watched this after over 17 years in the European Parliament, but when they win a referendum, so when the French voted on the Maastricht Treaty 25 years ago nearly, and a tiny majority said yes to the Maastricht Treaty, that was great. But when the Danes voted against it by a bigger margin, they were forced to vote again. And I think that the significance of Brexit is, despite the protests that we're seeing in London and Edinburgh and Birmingham and elsewhere today, I actually think that this government, this Parliament, is not going to try and force us into a second referendum. And I think you'll find that actually we will get on with this process. What I'm unsure about is whether we're going to get the kind of deal that we thought we were voting for. And this is my worry. And I don't know how you feel about this, Aaron, but my worry is this, that everything Theresa May has said so far sounds terrific. But I remember that as Home Secretary, everything she said about reducing immigration to tens of thousands a year, not hundreds of thousands a year, sounded terrific, but she didn't deliver. And that's my problem. I'm not sure I trust them to deliver. Do you agree with that?
We didn't have a mandate at that time to reduce immigration. I think the vote is a clear mandate to reduce net EU migration, which, as you pointed out, only is 7%. The European Union is only 7% of the world's population.
Yeah.
There is a bigger world out there than the European Union. I'd like us to have more immigration from China and India, as opposed to unlimited free movement of people from within the European Union. And the three Brexiteers in government, I think, with the amount of recruitment going on in the civil
OK, Aaron, thank you very much. A man with a strong view. We go to Aldi in Belgravia. Good morning, Aldi.
Hi, good morning, Nigel.
Hi.
I am going to take part of the march today because I live in this country for more than 30 years now, and I wanted a second referendum. And I tell you why, Nigel, because all your campaign was based on lies, and I'm really scared. You are a very dangerous man with Donald Trump. You are. And you just said you don't trust Theresa May. I don't trust Nigel. And I have to say another thing. You are not pure English. You have a French background. And I don't understand why you have so much against us Europeans. Why? Why you hate Europe, Nigel?
Oh, dear.
Another thing I'd like to ask you now, just 1 minute.
I'm enjoying it.
You are in America, Nigel, with Donald Trump. Yes, you are sharing the platform with him. I have this question for you now. What are your plans if this country is out of the EU and if Donald Trump will be elected as the next president of America? What are your plans? Are both of you two new dictators? We remove Saddam Hussein, we remove Gaddafi, we remove so many, like Pinochet in Chile, and now we have two new emerging, Nigel Farage and Donald Trump. So can you answer me, please?
Aldi, it's very kind of you, and I'm sorry that I'm going to have to now disappoint you. Very sorry. But actually, and it's a confession, I've tried to keep it quiet, but here it is. I love Europe. I love Europe. I think it's the most wonderful, exciting continent on the planet. Why? Because it has within such limited geography, such massive diversity. You travel 100 miles through Europe, you find different languages, different cultures, different histories, different cheeses. It's a wonderful place. And so much so, Aldi, that I actually worked for a French company for 7 years. I did a lot of business in Italy, which incidentally is my favourite European country, and I'm married to somebody from Germany, and my daughters are bilingual and have dual nationality. I love Europe, but I loathe what is being done in the name of Europe, and that is the imposition of a flag, an anthem, a police force, an army, and a completely unelected group of people having all the real power. So, whether you like me, dislike me, and the same goes for Donald Trump, we are people who actually are going through a democratic process to try and achieve what we want.
No, you are not for democracy. You are the new dictators emerging now. And don't say that. You have your daughter is here by the. Yes, I am. I speak 5 languages actually. Yes,
right.
And you don't love Europe at all. You don't love Europe. No, you don't. Okay.
Well,
you just pretend. You are hypocrite, Nigel. You are a great hypocrite. I'm sorry to say that. And you and Donald Trump, you are the greatest danger of this world. The world should be together. We should be united. We should be more and more and more united. And you are dividing. You are just dividing the world. You are creating a massive problem, not only in Europe, but outside now, because you are going to America. Which next country are you trying to go?
Well, actually, what I'm thinking about doing is having a tour of all the Commonwealth countries around the world. There are 2.2 billion people within those countries, 52 countries, really our greatest friends in the world, and we turned our backs on them to get involved with a really quite narrow European project with our next-door neighbours. Let's open ourselves up to the world. Please, believe me, Aldi, the Brexiteers are not anti-European. They're not insular. We believe in Britain having a bigger voice and being more engaged with the rest of the world. And I am not anti-Europe, and I'm going to prove it this lunchtime by drinking a glass of French wine. Thank you. John in Cumbria, good morning.
Hello, Nigel. How are you?
Hi, fine, thank you.
I'm just checking up on the fact that you said we had a 20% liability to the European Central Bank, any loss we might have there.
Yeah, roughly.
No, we make a contribution to the running costs of the bank, but we don't have a liability. I'm on their page now.
Yep.
The non-euro area NCBs are not entitled to receive any share of the distributable profits of the ECB, nor are they liable to any fund losses.
Well, I've taken legal advice on this, John, and yes, I understand what you're saying. I've taken legal advice on this, and that's all fine and dandy unless the whole thing goes bang. And there is a massive problem that the ECB has, and in fact other central banks around the rest of Europe have, is that there have been so many massive loans made to the Mediterranean countries that there actually comes a point when these Mediterranean countries will not put up with being reduced to third world status anymore, and those loans will become realised losses, and then there is potentially a massive problem. I think we're better and safer that we're not part of the Eurozone, and I would agree with that, and I think that was the first great historic decision that we made. But I have to say, all this talk about Britain's renegotiation and are we going to get a good deal from the EU or a bad deal from the EU, I've got a feeling, John, that actually the scale of problems that Brussels is facing are far more serious and far bigger than the United Kingdom wishing to leave. But there we are.
I'd agree with you that the EU zone is in no way without faults. But my point is, whose information do we take? You say something on the radio that we have this concrete liability to the European Central Bank. I go and check that on the internet with Wikipedia and all sorts of sources, and I can't find that information anywhere. So who the hell do we believe in this? I don't find myself able to believe politicians anymore.
Well, John, the one thing you can say for certain is whatever our liability is or is not to the European Central Bank, we'll be out of it, I hope, within 2 years, and that liability will not be ours, but it will be with the German people and the people of Northern Europe, and I think they made a terrible, terrible mistake with that currency, and thank goodness we stayed out. Last week I appeared on stage with Donald Trump, which seemed to upset Aldi and one or two other callers. I'll tell you after the break what he said to me as I came off stage. You're listening to me, Nigel Farage, on LBC. It's 10:45.
This is LBC.
I was kind of restricted in what I could eat. I had loads of discomfort. It really got to a point where I needed to have my teeth restored.
If it's time for dental implants, talk to Darwood and Tanner. Their pioneering treatments have helped many patients who thought having permanent teeth again would be impossible.
Having all of my teeth restored just gives you the confidence and the feeling of when I was younger, having fixed teeth.
Visit whenyousmile.com.
Buying a new car should be enjoyable. Sadly, it's usually a huge hassle, and you're never quite sure you're getting a good deal. Not anymore. At carwow.co.uk, you pick the car you want just the way you want it, and within 24 hours, we'll send you up to 5 great offers from some of Britain's best dealers. Join over 25,000 happy car buyers and save on average £3,600 off RRP at carwow.co.uk.
Hurry into Homebase for always low prices on tiles. We have over 300 options to choose from, starting at just £4.12 per square metre. Homebase, always low prices.
I wish I had a chance to learn how to produce a radio show
while studying for my GCSEs and A-levels.
I wish I went to the kind of school where I'd learn
what employers really wanted.
I wish I had
somewhere like that.
The school of the future is here. The Global Academy. A brand new state school in Hayes for 14 to 19-year-olds. Register now at globalacademy.com.
If you're after a great deal on broadband, PlusNet's on hand to help you out. Get unlimited broadband free for 12 months when you take $17.99 monthly line rental, now with £50 cash back. That's handier than Hans Christian Andersen's handy guide to holding hands. Unlimited broadband free for 12 months, now with £50 cash back. Offer ends 13th of September. Visit plus.net now. PlusNet will do you proud. Prices may change. 12-month contract. New customers in low-cost areas only. Traffic prioritisation applies. See plus.net/traffic. $6.99 route of delivery. Terms apply.
Here's one for Alessia Sanazaro, co-founder of Chuzik. Her app finds beats for happy feet. She's rocking her own business here, but every leading lady needs backup. And by GoDaddy, she found it. With domain and web hosting to put her business online, now she's got investors putting their hands up in the air.
Go Chuzik, GoDaddy. Taking your business online.
This is LBC with Nigel Farage.
Welcome back to the great EU debate, here with me, Nigel Farage, and I'll tell you in a moment what Donald Trump said to me as I left the stage. But looking ahead, this Sunday night from 8 on LBC, join Clive Bull for the Travel Hour. Clive and his expert guests will be offering holiday advice and answering your travel questions, and this week's featured destination is Peru. Catch up on previous episodes at lbc.co.uk, where you can also win a long-haul break to a pick of your destinations, including Dubai, Hong Kong and New York. It's all thanks to Gatwick Express, who are helping you arrive without the stress. Now, we're being bombarded with tweets and with texts, and I have to say that the vast majority of them are on the side of the argument that says this really is a done deal. I like this one. We've had our referendum. I'm not asking for the lotto to be rerun because I didn't win. And most of it, the Remainers, they're being called here. I quite like that. The Remainers will be protesting for purely selfish reasons, normally materialistic. The EU is a disaster that gets worse by the day. So it's some and some. We've also had people telling me that I'm wrong. The last time I looked, MEPs are elected. More lies from Farage. So, what is certain, what is absolutely certain, is the temperature of this debate has gone down very little since the 23rd of June. There are those who are out marching in just over an hour's time who feel very, very strongly that something bad has happened, but they're equally, and I've met large numbers of people who voted to leave, and they want this government to get on with it, and they're worried they might get shortchanged by the Brexit process. We go next to Sarah in Dagenham. Sarah, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Nigel. Thank you very much for listening to me and talking to me.
OK, great. Far away.
I'm just wondering how you think Donald Trump's going to handle any scorn he gets from a lot of countries, seeing as he was seen as such a joke to start with as a candidate.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, let me just be clear. The reason I went to the States last week wasn't an invitation from Donald Trump. I actually went as a guest of the governor of Mississippi, who was a big supporter, and had been for some time, of the Brexit cause. So I turned up in Mississippi to be told tomorrow night, Donald Trump's in town, there's a rally, we'd love you to talk about Brexit. And about 10 minutes before the rally opened, one of Trump's people said to me, Nigel, Donald's going to introduce you. I said, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right, they said. Donald's going to be your warm-up. I think they were joking. So I couldn't quite believe it. But just to make one thing clear, whilst I was there talking about Brexit and why I think there's a big crossover to American politics, because in America there are millions of people who've given up voting, thinking that politics, Washington, just doesn't speak to them anymore. And we got those people to vote in the British referendum, and maybe if those same kind of people vote in America, we'll get a very interesting result. And whilst it is clear that Hillary Clinton absolutely hates me, and I'm pleased about that, I think it's good to have enemies like Hillary Clinton. I didn't go, Sarah, to endorse Donald Trump, but he did, after I did my bit, he did say to me, you'll be my friend for life. Well, I tell you what, that's not bad, whatever we think of Donald Trump. And I think...
Well, yeah, that's fair enough.
I think he was sincere. But can I just say this to you, Sarah? Think back...
Finish what I was
go on.
Say?
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to ask you, you went as a guest of the Mississippi...
Yeah, I did.
...governor.
Yeah.
So, did he pay for it, or did our EU money pay for it?
No EU money.
Or did you pay for yourself?
No EU money, no taxpayers' money there or here was used paying for the flights, OK? I can assure you. I can assure you of that. Sarah, your point about Trump, just think about this. And I know I didn't endorse Trump. I'm not endorsing Trump. It's up to America to decide what it should do. But let me just say this to you, that I remember back in 1980 when everybody thought, and it's really your question, how on earth could a guy that advertised Marlboro cigarettes and was a B-list movie actor who was said not to have a particularly good IQ and not to be able to think much on his feet, namely Ronald Reagan, how on earth would he deal, with international statesmen all over the world? And I think the truth is that 8 years of Ronnie Reagan, he actually comes out as one of the great presidents of the 20th century. So I would just say this to you, and to everybody that's listening that thinks Trump just isn't up to it and he's a bit uncouth and all the rest of it, I would just say this: he could be the next president of the USA. The opinion polls over the course of the last week have tightened really quite considerably, so who's to say? But Sarah, I mean, do you think he's unfit to be president?
Oh, of course I do, yeah. If you tread on his foot, his hair's going to lift up like a pedal bin.
I like that.
I don't think he's fit whatsoever. I think he's a joke.
Right, well, fit or not, joke or not, he is, the last 2 opinion polls I saw, he was 2 points behind in one and 1 point ahead in another. So either way, in about 70 days' time, there is going to be a very, very close fight in this American election. And interestingly, Brexit will be part of that debate, which says to me that having voted for Brexit, somehow the United Kingdom is a bit more significant in the world than perhaps it was before. That's my view. Anyway, Hugh from Wimbledon, good morning. What do you have to say?
Hello, Nigel. I have to say this, by the way. It's my first time on Talk Radio, and it's really a privilege to speak with you.
Thank you. And what have you got to say here? What have you got for us? Go on.
There's this whole thing about the alt-right conspiracy going on, circulated by the mainstream media, and to me, it's like a white supremacist group, but I really don't know exactly. But do you have any knowledge of what the alt-right is and how it's relevant today?
No knowledge of it at all. No knowledge of it at all, Hugh. And I didn't see any white supremacists, I'm pleased to say, when I was in Mississippi. So we'll move on to Beverly from Bromley. Beverly, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I wanted to, well, first of all, this question on Brexit. I do believe that Parliament should have discussions and then decide. I don't think that it should be left to, or solely to, the Prime Minister, because, as everyone knows, the referendum was advisory.
Well, under our Constitution, Beverly, that's absolutely true. Legally, it was an advisory referendum. But don't you think morally it was binding on our political classes?
I'm not sure about morally. When we talk about politicians and morals, they don't always go together.
Well, that's true.
I think, this is a very, very important passage in the history of the United Kingdom. And it's not something that should be taken lightly. And pause for thought and exactly what it's going to mean for us. I think, it's something that should happen.
Well, Theresa May, Beverly, and, you put your finger on this. Theresa May has said she won't be going to a full vote of Parliament on this, that she will declare Article 50 as Prime Minister because she has a mandate from the people to do so. And you're arguing that Parliament should be able to vote on whether we trigger this article or not.
First of all, Theresa May, although I do like her, I don't think she has a mandate from the people because she was not chosen by the people to be Prime Minister. So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I said, the thing was advisory, and I think it's Parliament that should really decide.
OK, well, Beverly, no, thank you, and you're the second caller that's pretty much said that this morning. All I would say is if the House of Commons voted against the result of the referendum, then you wouldn't be having marches in London with Eddie Izzard and perhaps Bob Geldof and maybe 10 or 15,000 people. I think you'd have a couple of million marching in London who would be absolutely furious that on the one time when they felt they'd made a real change to their futures and to this country, it was ignored by career politicians. We go now to Femi in Cheshunt in Hertfordshire. Femi, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
I want to say, first of all, I was very, very impressed by the way he handled the Brexit campaign, because I'm impressed by somebody who stands on principle and what he did over decades in the European Parliament, making your case in your unconventional style, with your joie de vivre and your charm and everything, and it was a phenomenal success. And so I'm very, very pleased by that. But I was disappointed by the way you appeared on the stage at Donald Trump's convention in the U.S. and your comments about Hillary Clinton, because I think you may have damaged your brand by doing that. I used to live in the U.S. And I know very much what Republicans and Democrats have done over the years and decades. And I know that Hillary Clinton has done phenomenal work over the decades on child poverty, child education, all sorts of social issues to improve the chances of the less privileged in the US who are really, really burdened. And there has been a massive, relentless campaign to undermine her, which I sorely detest. And I think...
Yeah, you may be right. I mean, look, I don't doubt her sincerity, Femi, at all. And yeah, the email thing, maybe it's getting exaggerated. But the point was, Femi, she was on the side of Brexit. Trump was against. I thank you for your kind comments and your less kind ones. It's the end. It's in the next hour. An angry husband has revealed a shocking photograph of his mentally unwell wife being forced to sleep in the back of a police car due to a lack of hospital beds. If you go to lbc.co.uk now, you can see that photograph. And the husband who took the photograph will be speaking to me next about the lack of support for his wife's disorder. I want to hear about your experiences with mental health, good or bad. Call us on 0345 6060 973. From LBC, I'm Nigel Farage. All that comes next.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, a nationwide series of March for Europe rallies are being held today. Protesters will demand the UK keeps close ties with the continent despite the Brexit vote in June this year. Events are being held in London, Edinburgh and Birmingham, among others. Comedian and pro-Europe campaigner Eddie Izzard has told LBC it's an issue he feels strongly about.
I encourage people who are of a positive heart, who do understand what we're trying to do for humanity, keep coming up with ideas, keep moving forward. I'm proud to be British and I'm proud to be European. And I'm proud of my country and I want to go to other countries and say, so we do some good stuff in our country. What do you do? Can we learn from you? Can you learn from us?
Sir Richard Branson says Jeremy Corbyn made a mistake in a film he made about packed train carriages on Virgin. The Labour leader had claimed he couldn't find a seat on the service from London to Newcastle. But speaking about it for the first time, Sir Richard, who owns Virgin Trains, has told LBC he made a mistake.
Trains, I think, were right in defending themselves. They knew straight away that there was something like 140 empty seats on the train, and therefore they got out the CCTV and they corrected a statement that they felt was not correct.
The Prime Minister flies to China later to take part in her first G20 summit with world leaders. Theresa May is expected to face pressure from her host to give the go-ahead for a Chinese-backed nuclear plant in Somerset. Downing Street says no decision is imminent. Surgeons have attacked plans to block obese patients from NHS surgery for up to a year to save money. A commissioning group in North Yorkshire has issued new policies which would delay operations for those with a high body mass index. The Royal College of Surgeons says the rules are wrong. A Church of England bishop has revealed he's gay, apparently after a Sunday newspaper threatened to publish a story about his sexuality. Bishop of Grantham, Nicholas Chamberlain, says he's in a long-term celibate relationship. But Reverend Canon Gavin Ashenden has told LBC he can't understand why it was being talked about in the first place.
What it says about sex is that it stays within marriage for men and women for the procreation of children. So I don't understand then why a priest or a bishop would want to say, hey, I'm gay, here are my romantic and erotic attractions. I don't think it's anyone else's business.
Wayne Rooney will become England's most capped outfield player tomorrow. New manager Sam Allardyce has already named his first starting lineup for the opening World Cup qualifier in Slovakia. Rooney will earn his 116th cap. LBC weather after a dry and sunny start in the southeast. Rain will move in this afternoon. Heavy rain and gusty winds in most other places. A high of 21 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Moira Alderson.
Right now at Wix, there's 15% off everything when you click and collect until the 6th of September. Why? Because these are our homes. Wix, let's do it right. Exclusions apply, cannot be used in conjunction with any existing voucher. £75 minimum spend.
LBC Travel, good morning. I'm Tom Watts in Kent. The M20 closed all this weekend for repairs after the bridge collapse last Saturday. London-bound shut from junction 4 at Leybourne to 2 at Rootham, and coastbound from the M25 to Leybourne. The M26 is completely closed. Nearby, the A21, the Sevenoaks bypass, that's closed southbound after an accident after the A25. As a result of all of that, long delays on the anti-clockwise M25 to junction 2 for the A2, clockwise from junction 4 at Orpington to junction 5 for the M26. In London, the A13 down to one lane westbound at Ferry Lane because of a fuel spill. On the train to Bellio Greater Anglia, and TfL rail suspended between Liverpool Street and Shenfield, and trains from Paddington are delayed by up to an hour. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Nigel Farage. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC.
Good morning. An angry husband has revealed a shocking photograph of his mentally unwell wife being forced to sleep in the back of a police car due to a lack of hospital beds. And that photograph is on the website lbc.co.uk. The husband that took that photograph will be speaking to me next about the lack of support for his wife. And I want to hear about your experiences with mental health care in this country. Have you received poor care? Have you received brilliant care? Let us know, please, on 0345 6060 973. And I shall certainly share some of my experiences as well. Heading up to the general election of 2015 as a party leader, I was lobbied very heavily. And I was told by lots of people in the know that mental health care was the Cinderella service of the National Health Service, that it was not getting not just money, but it wasn't getting the right level of prioritisation. And I was told, as with the other party leaders, that actually a lot of people desperately in need of care weren't getting it. There are also very big questions about, with the more extreme cases, whether care in the community actually works or whether it poses a risk to those individuals and to others around them. So there is a big debate that's been going on about mental health services, but my feeling is it's been going on below the radar. It's not something that's touched our big, our big sort of conversation, and that's why this photograph of Katie Simpkins sleeping in the back of a police car is such an incredible shock, and it's appeared across the newspapers, and I think it is an important moment to talk about how on earth that could have happened in Wiltshire. And we are indeed fortunate to have her husband, Tristan Simpkins, on the phone this morning to explain exactly what happened. Tristan, good morning.
Hiya.
Hi. So how on earth did all this come about? Please tell us.
Well, basically, at about 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, my wife, Katie, was struggling really bad. She's got a diagnosis of emotionally unstable personality disorder. Mm-hmm. It's more commonly known as borderline personality disorder. It's basically where, throughout your past, if you've had a mixture of either sexual, physical or emotional abuse, you find it difficult to work with your emotions, and they can come over very intensive and overwhelming.
And how does that manifest itself, Tristan, at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Basically, she struggles with self-harm urges and feeling low constantly. So sometimes when she feels low for a long period of time, which can stand over a couple of days, or if the force of urging gets too intense for her, her thoughts then transgress into suicidal thoughts.
Right.
And she'd been struggling for the last few days, as she described it, putting a mask on, trying to pretend everything's okay when really it's not. And due to the lack of support in the area, she finds it difficult to talk to people. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, she had self-harmed. So I took her over to the Trowbridge Minor Injury Unit to get it treated, which she did agree to. But then when it came to talking about coming home and when we were about to go home is when she hit crisis, because she just didn't want to go home. She just wanted to commit suicide. So she started screaming and shouting and banging her head against the wall. So I restrained her the best I could without being what I class as abusive, because I'm at the end of my husband, not a care worker. And so the nurse there rang the crisis team. She's known to the mental health team, and that's what they're there for. But they just turned around and said, well, she's at a safe place, she's in hospital, what do you expect us to do? So the nurse had no choice but to call the police, as I was struggling to restrain her, and if we didn't, she wouldn't stay safe. So we had 4 lovely female police officers come out, and they supported Katie the best they could, again, without being too restrictive. And managed to calm her down to a state where she did agree that she would come home in the car with me. And then we'll try and get through the night and then speak to the intensive team in the afternoon and see if we can calm her down from there, put a new care plan in place. As soon as we got out of the hospital, started walking to my car, her thoughts got impulsive and she started walking away from the car, walking down the path, just trying to wander off, find somewhere to commit suicide. The police had no choice to put on a Section 136 under the Mental Health Act, which is a 24-hour hold-in section where you wait for a mental health assessment in a better place of safety.
Yeah, and safety meaning hospital, or could it mean home, or?
It means hospital. Throughout Wiltshire, we have, I know definitely of 3 what's called 136 suites, or places of safety, where it's run by the AWP mental health team, and you have a healthcare assistant and a nurse normally running them, so you can give her medication, give her professional advice, and help keep her safe until she has the assessment by a social worker and 2 mental health doctors. But at this point, the police had just sectioned her, so they took her back into hospital, and the nurse and the 2 police officers then tried desperately to find one of these beds. At this point, I was told there was 9 in Salisbury, but I've been told now that's not the case. I know there's 4 in Bristol, 1 in Devizes, 1 in Swindon. So very limited beds, and they were all taken that night. So they tried ringing the places multiple times just in case anyone had been discharged from their care, so they can get her back into there. But unfortunately, they hadn't. So they decided that she had to go into custody because there was nowhere else for her to go. A&E wouldn't have been appropriate because at the end of the day, A&E staff aren't trained to restrain and do one-to-ones with people trying to commit suicide. It's far too stressful situation anyway.
A very difficult situation you were in. I mean, you were both in. I mean, do you feel? I mean, you talked about the beds that might have been in Salisbury or in Bristol. I mean, do you feel there's a lack, just a lack of facilities for people in this situation? Yes,
there's a lack of 136 beds in general. As AWP had quoted that there's only 2 in Wiltshire, and although I've read that they've received funding from this 15 million bid for another 3 beds in Devizes, the AWP have quoted they're applying for 1 extra bed. So if Katie and 2 of her friends both all go in crisis on the same night, at least one of them is going into custody because there's no place for them.
And how is the situation now, Tristan?
She's in hospital at the moment. Her suicidal thoughts have subsided, but there is more to the story. Fortunately, it was a very long night. I stayed up for 41 hours.
And how does this impact on you and work and everything else?
When she's really struggling, not safe to stay at home, sometimes I do have to take time off work and try and keep her safe. But because I'm also I'm only an agency worker for a care company,
right?
So I'm on a 0 hours contract. So if
you don't go to work, you don't earn.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's pretty tough. Yeah, it's pretty tough. And have you generally? I mean, obviously, this specific example and this very shocking photograph of Katie sleeping in the back of a police car. But in general terms, have you been? I mean, here's a lack of beds, but have you been satisfied, dissatisfied with mental health services? I mean, how do you feel about the situation overall?
Overall, I have mixed feelings about it. Katie's had several admissions into hospital. She had a 15-month admission into a Priory hospital under NHS beds. And the first 5 months were pretty good because it was at the Priory in Roehampton, so it's a big private ward. All the staff there are really well trained, really good therapies there. But fortunately, the ward got closed because it was deemed not suitable for Katie's diagnosis. So they got moved to Milton Keynes Priory, which is a forensic-based ward. So unfortunately, that was severely understaffed, full of agency, who didn't have the adequate training, and the ward wasn't actually ready to be opened. And also in Devizes as well, I had put in a few complaints to CQC, because there was one case where they felt Katie had posted something onto Facebook which was against the ward, so the ward manager demanded that she confiscated her phone. And because she was on a section, the ward manager felt she was entitled to do this. Of course, Kate refused, so they physically restrained her just to get her mobile phone off of her. Whereas, as far as I'm concerned, that's, against her human rights,
Tristan,
of her liberties doing that.
You've had a very up and down time with this, and it's clearly having a massive impact on your lives. Can I just thank you for coming on LBC and for really explaining that absolutely as fully and as openly as you did. And it kind of, it's one thing reading about it and seeing a photograph on a website or in a newspaper, but to hear that story, it really makes us all understand that there is a real problem here. And can I wish both of you, on behalf of everybody here at LBC, all the very best, Tristan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, that was a big experience, and we heard it in absolutely full detail. And I want to hear about your experiences with mental health care in this country. Have you received poor care, or have you received absolutely fantastic care? I shall certainly share some of my experiences, and after the break, we're going to go to Dame Marjorie Wallace, who is the founder and chief executive of the mental health charity SANE, and perhaps get a real expert opinion there. Join me again, Nigel Farage, after the break.
This is LBC.
She did it 4 years ago in Beijing. Is she going to do it in London 2012? It's surely another gold, a great, great goal for Ellie Simmonds! A new world record of 5:19.17.
They did it in London. Now, get ready for Rio. The Superhumans return. The Rio 2016 Paralympics. Coverage starts from the 7th of September on Channel 4.
It's not the size of the car, it's the size of the adventure. It's not the shortcut, it's the scenic route. It's not squinting in the sun, it's stopping to enjoy it. Whatever they look like, these are the journeys that matter. Esso Synergy Supreme Plus, helping to improve fuel economy wherever you go. Esso, energy lives here. Synergy Supreme Plus fuel benefits are compared to corresponding Synergy regular grade. Fuel economy may vary depending on engine type and condition, driving style and fuel previously used. Synergy Supreme Plus available at selected Esso sites. See esso.co.uk for details.
Hurry into Homebase for always low prices on tiles. We have over 300 options to choose from, starting at just £4.12 per square metre. Homebase, always low prices.
Direct Line guaranteed to beat any public liability insurance quote for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Search Direct Line Public Liability Insurance. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
If your offices are looking tired and outdated, staff are complaining and you're embarrassed when clients come round, it's time to think about the next steps. Speak to Maris Interiors, the experts in office design and refurbishment. Initial consultations, design ideas and budgets are provided without charge and will show you all the available options. To arrange a meeting or find out more about what we can do for you, visit officerelocation.co.uk. Maris. Workplace. Design. Experts.
OK, I'm going to say something radical in this advert for WeBuyAnyCar.com. If you sell your car privately, you might get a better price than if you sell with us. Yep, I said it. But ask yourself this. How much do you value your evenings and weekends? Is it really worth giving up so much of your time for a little extra money? No? Then join the thousands of motorists who sell with us quickly and easily every week. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
All businesses start small.
Here's your tea, love.
But things can suddenly get bigger. And even bigger. But business can also go down.
Here's your tea, love.
So join the network that doesn't log you in. With Business Essentials from O2, you can change your data and apps every 30 days. Business Essentials from O2. More for you. Search O2 Business.
For O2 Business customers only, terms apply.
No matter how strong her views, Katie Hopkins just comes right out and says it.
There's so many Ramonas with chips on their shoulders. You don't like the fact that we voted Brexit. We won. You don't like it because you're Ramona, and you'd love to see this jungle move back to Kent because you'd see it as punishment, and you'd be able to gloat in your Ramoning way and say, ha, I told you so. We should have stayed part of that useless centre of nonsense that is the EU.
Katie Hopkins, Sunday morning from 10 on LBC.
I want to hear about your experiences with mental health care in this country. Good care, bad care, let us know, please, on 0345 60 60 973. Well, we heard the story there about what happened to Katie and Tristan Simpkins down in Wiltshire when Katie, in the end, was forced to sleep in the back of a police car for lack of beds. One of the most consistent and long-term campaigners on mental health in this country has been Marjorie Wallace. She's the founder and chief executive of the mental health care charity SANE. And I know, Marjorie, that you were lobbying political leaders ahead of the last general election. In fact, you lobbied me very hard to explain to me that there were some real deficiencies in mental health care in terms of our provisions that we're making in this country. Marjorie, good morning and welcome to the programme.
Good morning.
Tell me the experience, the story that we just heard about Katie and Tristan Simpkins. How common is this sort of thing?
Sadly, it echoes so many stories that we hear on our helpline at SANE, and we come across again and again. I mean, what it reflects is that really the psychiatric services are in meltdown. And the reason is that over the years we have decimated the numbers of hospital beds available for people with mental illness. And it's gone under the banner of community care, and in fact that has been okay. I mean, yeah, a lot of people didn't need to be in the old hospital, needed to be in the community, but it went far too far. Do you know how many beds we lost over the 2 decades? Nearly 70%. And so we've only got now 16,000 adult psychiatric beds available in the whole country, and on several occasions last year there were no beds whatsoever, and that has terrible implications. And the story that we heard today, one is that the police have to get involved. They don't want to do what they have to do, but they say a third of their time in many areas is taken up with picking up the pieces that psychiatric services are letting go. And they have to either take, under, as we heard, section somebody, take them to a police cell, and then they have to be treated as criminals. So the only crime they've done is to feel, as Katie did, suicidal, upset, really, really vulnerable, and they are then treated as criminals. So police don't want to do it, but they have no alternative sometimes, because every time they take them to a hospital, they're told there are no beds available, and so they take them to hospital, or they have to shunt some people round the country. And, we have people as young as 12 and 13, and they are shunted hundreds of miles around the country where their family can't visit them, and they're just left alone in one unit, then shunted to another unit, all because there are no beds available locally.
What I don't understand, Marjorie, is, there's always a massive debate about the National Health Service and how much should or should not be put in, but nobody can argue that the last couple of governments have not steadily increased the spending overall on the National Health Service. But what you're telling me is that in terms of mental health care, there's been a 70% reduction.
And that's over 2 decades.
Over 2 decades, yeah.
Years. But, I mean, but the beds are hemorrhaging as we speak. I mean, they're closing down hospital beds as we talk. I mean, that's just going on.
I mean, Nick Clegg did try and make a big issue of this, didn't he, at the last general election? I remember him talking very clearly about it. I mean, are you being listened to by the government, by the National Health Service? I mean, how difficult is it for you to make your case?
Well, Nick Clegg was very, very receptive, and Norman Lamb, who was then the care minister, they were receptive. It's very hard to make the case because actually it's all devolved to the trusts, and the trusts are faced with the cuts that they're having to make, and the new monies, the few new monies for mental health, it's very hard to see where they reach the front line. But let's just take the case of Katie. I mean, she goes into a hospital, and she's very, very fortunate to have somebody who understands that she is ill and is fighting for her. Can you imagine if she were on her own or the person she's with didn't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, I can tell you some terrible stories about that. But just take it, she goes there. Now, if she'd been going there with a high fever, if she'd had an ectopic pregnancy, if she had with heart pains, they could not have not taken her into the hospital. The fact that she went because she had suicidal thoughts, they allowed her to go out to a place of safety, and the place of safety they knew had to be the police. And actually, I thought it was really rather kind of the police to let them sleep in the back of her car, because it's a lot better than a police cell.
Yeah, there's another point that's been made, Marjorie, by one of the listeners, Graham Moore, who's tweeted in and said the prisons are full of mentally ill people because they've got nowhere else to go. Is there some truth in that as well?
Absolute truth. I mean, I did a story the other day. The prisons, just as we've lost the psychiatric beds, the prison population has almost doubled with mentally ill people, and about 70% of people in prisons have one or other mental health condition. Now, you know, I'm now being these suicides that you're finding of people in prison, they've risen. The report came out only this week, saying that there has been this rise of the number of suicides and a huge increase in self-harm in prison because people there are not receiving the psychiatric treatment that they need.
Marjorie, you don't paint a very happy picture about Britain's mental health care services. Clearly it is a bit the Cinderella service. It has been shunted down the list. I want to thank you for not cheering us up, but at least telling us where we are, and we wish you luck. And all good fortune in continuing your campaign with SANE, and thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us this morning. Thank you. That was Marjorie Wallace from SANE, not painting a particularly pretty picture. 70% decline in beds over the course of the last 2 decades in this country. That, against a rising population, pretty worrying, I would have thought. Next we go to Becky from Lincolnshire. Becky, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. Would you share your experience with us, please?
I will. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be painting a particularly better picture than your last caller, to be honest.
Right.
I've had a very mixed experience with the mental health teams in Lincolnshire. I was diagnosed with bipolar maybe 8 years ago, and it's been fairly well managed through medication. Now, about maybe 9 months to a year ago, I started having what they term a psychotic episode, which doesn't mean that I was running around like a maniac, you know, like they would have in films. But for me, it was a very scary experience where I started seeing somebody following me who didn't exist. I was getting in my car, trying to run away from them. It was a very, very frightening time. And fortunately, I have a very understanding partner who would calm me down. Now, I was put under the crisis team in Lincolnshire, where it's a mixture of support workers and mental health nurses. My experience, ironically, has been that the mental health nurses, who have often got mental health degrees, the care I've had from them has been so insignificant compared to the people who are called support workers. The support workers have been absolutely fantastic. They visit the house every other day. They don't have the training as such. They don't have the degrees, the formal qualifications, but their attitude is incredible. Now, the mental health nurses, I've had nurses not call up, not visit when they say they were going to.
So it can be good and it can be bad, really. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, but ironically for me, it's been the people who I suppose are paid less, who are considered to have less qualifications. It's those people who have really kept me going. I've had psychiatrists where I've sat in the room and I've been crying my heart out, and they've taken a phone call on their mobile phone, which, when you're in the midst of pouring out every emotion that you've got, to have somebody take a social phone call is absolutely, well, in my view, it's horrendous. It's incredibly disrespectful.
Well, it's down to bad training too, isn't it? Because it's a completely unprofessional way to approach things, isn't it? I just wonder, I mean, yeah, clearly you've had mixed, very, very mixed care. I mean, do you think it's a question of money, or a question of perhaps even attitude is what you're saying on this call, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think that I have every sympathy with the mental health nurses, because I've heard, from the horse's mouth that there simply aren't enough of them. And, their time is limited to, say, half an hour per patient. And when you have somebody who was going through the period that I was, half an hour is really only just enough time to calm me down before I can even start talking. So I think there is that. But I think attitude plays a really big part of it. And this is why it's been so ironic for me that the people who've been formally trained and spent years at university, their attitude has been so much worse than the others.
Interesting.
And it makes me wonder whether you're just seen as somebody that's on a conveyor belt, go along, spend half an hour with that person, forget about them and move on to the next person.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is really sort of discouraging.
Yeah. Becky, thank you for sharing your experiences, all of them, good and bad, and we wish you extremely well. And following on from the conversation we were having about police officers having to get involved, this is a text that we received. Morning, Nigel. I'm a serving police officer, and on this particular occasion I had to detain a woman for her own safety and take her to her local mental health unit. When we arrived, we were greeted by a nurse who proceeded to use breathalyzer on the woman. The nurse said she was unable to admit the woman to the unit as she'd failed the test. I wasn't convinced, so I used the police breathalyzer from the car. The woman didn't show any alcohol in her system at all. If I'd believed the nurse, the woman would have been taken back into custody and placed in a cell, which would have been totally inappropriate, as she clearly needed help and skills that the police don't have. So that's really pretty disturbing in many ways. I'm asking about your experiences with mental health care in this country. This is after the angry husband, and we heard him earlier, Tristan Simpkins, revealed the shocking photograph of his mentally unwell wife being forced to sleep in the back of a car due to a lack of hospital beds. Look at the photograph on lbc.co.uk. You're listening to me, Nigel Farage, here on LBC. Right now it's 11:30, and it's news time with Moira Alderson.
Thousands of people are expected to take part in March for Europe rallies in London and across the UK this lunchtime. Protesters want to keep close ties with Europe to stop the 2-year EU breakaway process and get a second referendum. The government's announced plans to ban the sale of cosmetics containing microbeads by the end of next year. The tiny particles of plastic which are found in things like soaps and scrubs end up in the sea, where they're dangerous to sea life. A dog's been found alive under rubble 9 days after Italy's earthquake. The golden retriever appeared in good health after his rescue in Amatrice. LBC weather: after a dry and sunny start in the southeast, rain will move in this afternoon. Heavy rain and gusty winds in most other places. A high of 21 degrees.
LBC.
So, here's a question for you. What car has what car chosen as the best small car under £12,000 for the 4th year in a row? Anyone? No? This car, the Dacia Sandero. It's just one of the cars in the Dacia range, which has bagged heaps of awards since it launched. Pretty good going, eh? Prices start from $5,995. Dacia. You do the maths. Participating dealers only.
Estate agents? Who are they to tell you what to do? If you want to sell your home fast, for cash, speak to Property Rescue. There are no middlemen, just a genuine cash sale, which means you could exchange within 48 hours. I know, unbelievable. So, middlemen, schmiddlemen, speak to Property Rescue. They're buying houses all over Britain. Go to propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Problem solved.
The school of the future is here. The Global Academy. A brand new state school for 14 to 19-year-olds. Register now at globalacademy.com.
One final chance.
Gone! They've won it! Amazing scenes.
Lords host cricket's last cup final of 2016 on Saturday the 17th of September.
Unbelievable, they hung in there and somehow they've got over the line.
Cricket fans can witness history being made at the Royal London One-Day Cup Final, with under-16 tickets priced at just £5. Visit lords.org/final to secure your seat for a great family day out.
Hurry into Homebase for always low prices on tiles. We have over 300 options to choose from, starting at just £4.12 per square metre. Homebase, always low prices.
Hit the bullseye this October by becoming a sober hero and take a month-long break from the booze to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support. No darting to the bar, No doubles. Just wake up happily hangover-free. Gain maximum respect and know that you'll be helping to change the lives of people with cancer. It's all in a month's work for a sober hero. So go sober for October and sign up today at gosober.org.uk. Game on!
The new Dacia Sandero is What Car's best small car under £12,000 for the 4th year in a row. Why? Well, come and see for yourself. Test drive the award-winning Dacia range from only $5,995 at Dacia Retail Group. Find your nearest dealer at daciaretail.co.uk.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nigel Farage.
We're talking about the Cinderella service of the National Health Service. Yes, it's mental health services. We've heard from Tristan Simpkins, whose wife, you saw the photograph of her sleeping in the back of a police car because of a lack of hospital beds. We've heard from an expert, Marjorie Wallace, who's in charge of the charity SANE, that there's been a dramatic reduction in the number of hospital beds available for mental health patients in this country. And we've heard from a couple of callers that the care they've had has been, well, I would say, mixed, to say the very least. And next we go to Francesca in Blackheath. Francesca, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, our sad story is that we lost our 27-year-old son 2.5 years ago. He was diagnosed with a cannabis-induced psychosis 12 months prior. And basically, it was really just a struggle thereafter in trying to get him the right care and also to sort of, rehabilitate him and give him the future that he deserved. I mean, he was a historian, he was a graduate, he studied law. He was a bright young person who came to a tragic end, and every single day since, we live with the heartbreak, the heartbreak. I just want to say that my feeling is that we don't really understand mental health enough. And when I hear that we need to put sort of mental health services on a parity with sort of physical health, I often feel, and I'm perhaps not articulating myself very well this morning, but I feel that if we're just going to do more of the same, then I really don't think that's enough. I think it needs a total rethink. Initially, our son was seen in the private sector. Fortunately, he was working at the time, so he had private medical care.
Yeah.
And we went to see, a supposedly eminent psychiatrist in Harley Street. He was rather aloof. He kind of, we took our son with, so it's my husband and I, and he was rather rude, actually, rather aloof. It felt that he was sort of surveying him as some sort of a specimen, not a person in terrible distress. And we eventually persuaded him to go into a private hospital. We were assured that this would be good for him. So he went as a sort of, we persuaded him to go voluntarily, and so he went voluntarily and managed to persuade the doctor that he was well enough to come home, and he sort of came home after 10 days. But I mean, I could say so much really about it. But,
yeah, I mean, you've obviously had a horrendous experience that you've been through. Horrendous experience. I suppose the medical profession would counter by saying that they can't solve absolutely every single case. I mean, that's my guess as to what they would say. But, I mean, do you feel there should have been better help, clearer help? Obviously, you do a little bit.
I feel that what our son needed was a relationship with somebody that he could trust, that would give him the time and give him the confidence to talk about some of the symptoms I think that he was feeling, that he was afraid to discuss. I I think towards the end of his life, he was probably hearing some voices and things like this, which really disturbed him.
And you say this was
admitted that.
This was induced by cannabis, you were saying earlier on.
This was induced by cannabis, but it has to be said that our son was sort of withdrawing more and more into himself.
Was this university, sort of the party scene, that kind of thing, was it, or?
Yes, it was, yes. But even prior, we felt that we began to lose him, really, in the transition from sort of primary school to secondary school. And a lot of the sort of the symptoms one put down to, spending too much time in his room, etc., we put down to sort of adolescence. So this sort of behaviour didn't really change very much. But interestingly, we have, on my father's side of the family, have a lot of history of epilepsy. And after we lost our son, I went to see a mental health charity in North London, and they very kindly gave me their free time, and I spent some time with a psychiatrist up there. And I said to him, I've been thinking about what I want to talk about today. I'd like to ask if you could help me to understand how our son perceived the world. If I tell you some of the things he said to me and some of the things he did and some of the things that he found disturbing, like bright lights and all the rest of it. I sat there and I told him all of this. He's an eminent psychiatrist working in a very well-known charity. And he stopped me at the end and he said, Francesca, he said, did anyone ever mention to you temporal lobe epilepsy? And it was a light bulb moment because my father had been a severe epileptic. And I understand that with this type of epilepsy, you don't necessarily have the full convulsions, but you have disturbed sensory perception. Our son couldn't deal with strobe lights. All of these things we had told the private doctor, we told the NHS doctor, we told our GP that these were largely ignored. They were ignored. And I now suspect that might have been his vulnerability to cannabis. So I think we need to think about these things as well.
Yes, well, it's a desperate story, Francesca, but the one thing I have to say, and you're right, we're all made differently, and we can all cope with alcohol differently, or whatever it may be, but so many young people think cannabis is absolutely harmless, and unfortunately, for a certain percentage of people, it does them absolutely grave harm. Francesca, thank you for telling us that sad story. We go to Lee in Orpington. Lee, good morning.
Oh, hi, Nigel.
Hello.
Hi.
What's your experience of the mental health services in Britain, Lee?
Absolutely shocking. Absolute failure. The amount of money spent not helping is just shocking. Sometimes I like to work out the budget on me fighting for help and how much it's cost not to help. And obviously, if my son, he's 19, he's got high-functioning autism and various other, like OCD, a severe form of ADHD. He's had it since he was born. And I fought for help for him and for interventions. He didn't go to school for 7 years in our country because they couldn't identify a school place for him. Obviously, that's added to his problems. And I fought, and obviously he's costing the country so much money now because he is, on the outskirts of society. His mental health has deteriorated. Obviously, he's using cannabis now to self-medicate. As we know, that does not help at all.
No.
That increases the problems, but to him, it gives him a relief from it. I fought and fought. He was going to work, and that sort of helped the routine. But then the job moved, and he couldn't access it anymore. So since November, he's deteriorated. And I've tried to access the mental health system. He's always been part of the child one, but then when he got to an adult, obviously it changed. They won't accept him, even though he's got a long history of it. He's been arrested so many times for being mentally ill, which it shouldn't be a crime in this country to be mentally ill. And the amount it's cost since November, I've been fighting to access the mental services for him. I'm articulate, I'm a fighter. How ill people access it, to me, is impossible. I received a letter last week. The doctors really fought for him as well, and they said there's no help, there's no indication that needs any help.
Do you feel... Lee, do you feel that he should be hospitalised for a period of time? And what do you think he sort of needs?
The police have tried to section him 3 times in the last maybe 18 months. It takes like 10, 15 police to get into hospital. He's handcuffed to a bed. He's treated. Absolutely shocking. And because of the failures, after X amount, say 10 hours in a hospital or even longer, the police go, and obviously it's not their job because they should be out on the street anyway. They shouldn't be in a hospital handcuffing people. And then they go, nobody turns up, and I go home with my son that, 10 plus policemen can't manage. I'm 7 stone and 5'2", and there's just no help there at all. And the police, some of them are fantastic, some of them don't understand it at all, and they are really cruel to him, and that it's created more problems.
I mean, that point you're making there, we've had that already, haven't we, in this hour, that so often the police are actually doing jobs that should be done by nurses and doctors who are trained to help psychiatric and mental health patients.
Yes, it's not the police's job. They have to sit with him, so they're not on the streets. And, like I say, sometimes it's, 4 of them will stay there, but it takes 10 to get into the hospital. How can we have someone that it's took 10 policemen to get to a hospital and then they discharge him with no help? Well, they don't even discharge him. He discharges himself. He doesn't see anyone.
I suspect the cost of 10 policemen doing that, it would be cheaper, perhaps, if we train more doctors and nurses to look after people like your son.
And prescribe medication that helps, or just to see him. The amount of money not to help is shocking.
The thing that shocks me with your story is that when he was under 18, there was some care there. He gets to 18, and suddenly it's very difficult to access any care, and he's lucky because he's got you to fight for him. But for people out there who haven't got someone like you to fight for them, I guess their chances of getting help cannot be very good. Lee, another, I'm afraid, not very happy story, but thank you for sharing it with us. We'll continue for the next quarter of an hour or so to take your calls on your experiences with mental health services, and I will share mine and perhaps 1 or 2 thoughts. It's 11:45.
This is LBC.
Oh, I'm down, Churchy. Door down. I'm splintered off my hinges.
Oh, no.
We've been burgled. Secure the perimeter. Call for backup.
Oh, yes.
If your home is burgled, we're available to make it safe, day or night.
Oh, thanks, Churchy. Now swing me shut. I'm back in the frame.
Oh, yes.
Churchill, depend on the dog. Excludes Highlands and Islands. Policy and cover limits apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
One final chance.
Gone! They've won it. Amazing scenes.
Lords host cricket's last cup final of 2016 on Saturday the 17th of September.
Unbelievable. They hung in there and somehow they've got over the line.
Cricket fans can witness history being made at the Royal London One-Day Cup Final with under-16 tickets priced at just £5. Visit lords.org/final to secure your seat for a great family day out.
Direct Line guaranteed to beat any public liability insurance quote for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Search Direct Line Public Liability Insurance. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Do you know what Gaz and Lecky are doing all night in your home and how much energy they're using? Of course you don't. Nobody does. They're currently out of control. That's why from now until 2020, every home in Britain can claim a smart meter from their energy supplier at no extra cost to receive accurate bills and show exactly how much energy you're using in pounds and pence every hour of the day or night. Let's get Gaz and Lecky under control. For more information, pick up a leaflet from your local post office branch or visit smartenergygb.org.
More cars, more savings. Be amazed at cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
If you're after a great deal on broadband, Plusnet's on hand to help you out. Get unlimited broadband free for 12 months when you take $17.99 monthly line rental, now with £50 cash back. That's handier than Hans Christian Andersen's handy guide to holding hands. Unlimited broadband free for 12 months, now with £50 cash back. Offer ends 13th of September. Visit plus.net now. Plusnet will do you proud. Prices may change. 12-month contract. New customers in low-cost areas only. Traffic prioritisation applies. See plus.net/traffic. £6.99 route of delivery. Terms apply.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Noirs.
A series of March for Europe rallies are taking place across the country today.
Backed by the Greens' Caroline Lucas, Labour's Chuka Omana, and comedian Eddie Izzard, protesters are demanding a halt to triggering Article 50, a pause in the Brexit process, and for maintaining close ties with Europe. With only a 2% margin between Remainers and Brexiters in the referendum, I'm asking if we, as a nation, can afford to ignore the wishes of the other half of the country, like the presenter before me, Nigel Farage, just suggested.
Leading Britain's conversation, Majid Nawaz, this afternoon from 12 on LBC.
We're discussing mental health and whether care is good or bad in this country, and just a couple of thoughts and reflections from me. Believe it or not, it was Enoch Powell, over 50 years ago, who was the health minister, who introduced something that was called care in the community. And the idea was that from Victorian times onwards, we'd put people in vast numbers into institutions, and basically, once they'd gone through the front door, their chances of ever coming out were just about zero. And that was considered to be pretty barbarous and a huge waste of talent. And we began that process in the early 60s of beginning to make sure people weren't institutionalised, but they were able to go out and live in the community and receive their care in the community. I begin to wonder whether that process that Powell began all those years ago has not now been used in recent times, perhaps as a deliberate way of cutting down the bill. Because what happened to me was I finished up in a very unfortunate situation where a guy who was a care in the community patient threatened to kill me. He didn't just do it once, he did it on 5 repeated occasions. He was absolutely specific about the weapon he was going to use and where he was going to do it, and I felt in the end I had no choice, I'm afraid, but to go to the police. I went to the police. He finished up going to court. I had to give evidence. It was all pretty grisly stuff. He did 8 months in prison. He was released after 8 months in prison, back into the community, and then, I'm afraid to say, he finished up committing suicide. So it's a desperate story from his perspective, but it could have been a desperate story from my perspective. It could have been because about 120 people a year are now murdered by care in the community patients. So I do feel this in quite a strong personal way. I'm not advocating barbarism. I'm not advocating building big red brick institutions and banging people up. But everything we've heard this morning, from Marjorie Wallace and of course from Tristan Simpkins, but from everybody else ringing this morning, it begins to scream to you that we're relying on the police too much to deal with mentally ill people. We simply, by the sounds of it, we certainly haven't got enough beds, with a 70% reduction over the course of the last 2 years. And it sounds like we've got precious few nurses and doctors in this field. And my feeling is that the guy that threatened me and that finished up sadly killing himself, he should have been, it seems to me, in care for his safety and for everybody else's. Very, very sad. Beverly from Hackney, what's your experience? Good morning.
Hi. Back in 2000, my husband is autistic, and along with high-end autistic, and along with that comes mental health problems. In 2012, he had a meltdown, and one of the things that he kept threatening to kill himself. And one of the things he would do was he would try and run out into the road in front of cars. No, it wasn't true, but the person driving towards him didn't know that.
No.
And also, he opened the door of a moving car. Pulled over, he got out, stormed off. I called the police. We were not in the borough that we live in, okay? The police came, they wrestled him to the ground, handcuffed him, and said, we're going to take him to the hospital that represents the borough that we were in. And I went, no, you can't do that because mental health is this little bubble. You have to go to the mental health trust that you're under. Another mental health trust won't deal with you. It doesn't even matter if it's an emergency. They will not because they don't have the capacity to do it. We got him to the correct hospital under a 163, which means it's a police order and they have to detain him. Got him into the little room. It's like a little prison cell. Sat him down, managed to calm him down. Police were waiting around. I was with my son, actually, who was a teenager doing his O-levels. And they then said, oh, yes, he's under this doctor, he's got to go into this ward. Well, I don't know whether you've ever seen any of those like little scared rabbits where they suddenly run into a corner and he was rocking backwards and forwards on his knees. Please don't put me in that ward. Please don't put me in that ward. And they basically said, tough. Okay? The police managed to come. I was crying. I think everybody was crying. Managed to calm him down. The police went. They then turned around and said to us, no, we're not obeying the police order. He can come in as a voluntary patient. So I went to talk to him and I said to him, whatever they say to you, just say yes. Because they had to ask him. And if he'd have said no, he'd have gone home. He went yes. A couple of hours later, I get a phone call, I'm going to prison. Why? What's the matter? He wanted to go out onto the balcony just to get some air, and one of the staff said, no, you can't do that, so he decked them. It's not normally violent, don't get me wrong, okay? Sorted all that out. They moved him to another ward. A couple of weeks later, we went to see his psychiatrist. So I said to his psychiatrist, I was absolutely terrified. My son was terrified, I was terrified. The psychiatrist went to my husband, well, did you mean to kill yourself? And my husband went, well, no, not really. I already knew that. And he turned around and he went to me, well, then what was you scared of? And I promise you, Nigel, if I could have decked this psychiatrist, I would have decked him.
Yeah, so that
because that is not the way to talk to somebody.
Was he actually trained, this bloke? Did he have professional qualifications, Beverly?
He was a 100% psychiatrist. I tried like mad to get him away from this psychiatrist. I can't tell you. I went to the head of the psychiatrist department in our borough. I wrote to pals. I wrote to my MP and everybody, and you can't. And the thing is most boroughs in London are split into two because, as you know, most boroughs have two MPs.
Yeah.
And even if, my doctor thought that there was a psychiatrist in the other half of the borough that would benefit him better than the one that he was under, she could not recommend it. It is
the point you've been making here, and you made earlier about that incident, is that you're with one unit and that's it. They're the people that treat you, and there's no flexibility to move, even if you think you're not getting the right care. Is that what you're really saying, isn't it?
Yeah, you could be up in Scotland.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
Yeah.
And if you have an episode, then it's tough.
Yeah.
They can't treat you because...
Beverly, you've made a very important point. As you say, you're up in Scotland, there's an incident, but you have to come back to Hackney or whatever it is to get treated because that's the unit that you're on. Beverly, I wish you luck with your continuing struggles, and thank you very much for calling. And we go to Nat in East Grinstead. Nat, hello.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hello. I was on here to speak about my mental health. I mean, I've got a mental disability.
Yeah.
Yep, called Asperger's, and it's I was told to explain about how I feel about the whole help that I've had. I mean, recently I've moved from Havering in Hornchurch down to Sussex in East Grinstead, and they've transferred the service very well. So I was just going to share my experience, really.
So you've been looked after well, Nat? Is that what you're saying?
I have, yes. I've been looked at. I've got the help that I needed. I got everything that I really needed to help me with, and it all went from there, really.
Yeah. And so when you transferred from Havering down to East Grinstead, did that process go smoothly?
Yes, it did. It happened within about a week.
Wow. So you are a fully satisfied customer.
I am a fully satisfied customer. The one problem I would have is my former psychiatrist.
Yes.
She really didn't do much. I mean, recently I've just been granted a new psychiatrist.
Yeah.
In East Grinstead.
Yeah.
And she's doing obviously what she's meant to.
Yeah.
But the former psychiatrist didn't actually do anything apart from prescribe me with antidepressants.
Yes, and I think, Nat, the prescriptions of antidepressants across this country are on a sort of virtually industrial scale now, aren't they? We're talking about a lot of people. And whether that's the answer or not, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this field, Nat, and I'm pleased to hear you saying something that's actually really quite positive about mental health care in this country, because most of the rest of the calls haven't been. But no, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, we've had a bit of a round the houses this morning. We spent an hour nearly talking about mental health services and mental health care in this country, and I think the overall conclusion is it simply isn't good enough because there is not enough of it. But, of course, we spent the first hour talking about Euroscepticism, these marches that are taking place all over London, and I'd be fascinated to see how many people actually turn up on these. It was 40 to 50,000 last time when Geldof was there. It's Eddie Izzard today. I was told only 6,000 or 7,000 people had registered. Either way, that argument, that debate isn't going to disappear. Well, you've been listening this morning to me, Nigel Farage, and don't forget you can listen to LBC wherever, whenever you are by downloading it on the LBC app. And if you missed any of today's show, there's always the LBC podcast app available on iPhones and now on Android phones too. Coming up at 3 o'clock, it's Ian Payne. But next, it's Majid Nawaz. Over to you.
Thank you, Nigel. At 1, the Bishop of Grantham is the first to declare that he's gay and in a relationship. A threat by a Sunday paper to out him pushed the bishop to speak on his own terms. Why is this still news, and what does it say about religion in the 21st century? From 2, a former Tory health minister and MPs from across all parties have demanded urgent action to save our NHS from collapse. As we do for defence at 2% and foreign aid at 0.7%, do we need to allocate a specific percentage of our budget to save the NHS? But first, March for Europe rallies are taking place across the country today, with only a 2% margin between Remainers and Brexiters. I'm asking if we can afford to ignore the wishes of the other half of the country.
On FM, online, on your mobile.